watching Sunday Sound Off with Frank Boal.
Hey, and welcome back to Sunday Sound Off. Our first hot topic of the night. What is your confidence level in Yordano Ventura? TJ, it doesn't look physical because, he's still throwing with great velocity. It just means he's walking way too many guys still.
Yeah, the two things that I look at most with pitchers, starting pitchers, is how many innings can you give me and how few base runners do you allow? He's allowing way too many. He's got a 1.5 whip plus. In addition to that, I think that the fact that he's not able to get deep into games yet, he's only had 3 games so far this season where he's gone 6 innings or more, and I think that's a problem for Yordano Ventura. There are moments, and we still see moments with him where he can dial it up and he's got that special stuff, but too far and few between. I think he's trying to use some pitches that he feels more confident in, and the fact that his confidence is waning in his fastball, I think, is a problem. He's not in the Edinson Volquez, Ian Kennedy category with the Royals rotation right now, and unfortunately, I think he's much closer to a 4-5 guy right now than a 1-2 guy, and I think that's going to have to improve if the Royals are going to continue to win.
Blair, what do you think the problem is?
He walked 2 guys in the inning that got him beat today, had a leadoff walk, and then had an intentional walk later in that inning. And he leads the American League in walks. That has absolutely got to be curtailed. But maybe it's just as simple as this. He's 3-0 at Kauffman Stadium this year. He's 1-3 on the road. I don't know if there's why it is that way. He actually has a better career record in road games than he does at home. He was a little bit unlucky today. The run support wasn't there. He had an 0-2 pitch to Cabrera. Yeah, thank you, Cabrera. Mm-hmm. That he just got it in the middle of the plate, missed his spot, and that pitch is the one that got him beat. He gave up more runs in the last game that he won. He was the winner in the 8-4 win over the Red Sox last week. So, look, I think he's fine. Just let's see what happens in the next few starts.
Sharon?
Yordano Ventura is a riddle wrapped in an enigma. I mean, if you can figure that guy out, you've got something that you've done something that at least the Royals haven't been able to do. Like, this guy is the rare guy who's walking people, but the strikeout total's not going up. Today, he walks more than he strikes out, yet he hangs around in the game. Usually these things, you walk, then you come over the heart of the plate and you get crushed, yet he still has enough stuff to dance around and make a decent game of it. Look, I don't know. I can't figure it out. I mean, just trying to, analyze a guy's delivery makes the words feel like I'm throwing up in my mouth when I try to break down a big leaguer's swing or how they throw the baseball. I've never seen anything like this. A guy who can get the big strikeout when he really needs it, yet can't find the plate consistently, but can't miss it enough to be effectively wild. He's the most frustrating pitcher I've ever covered.
There it is in a nutshell. Here's our second hot topic of the evening. The Chiefs over-under right now is 9.5. Blair, too high, too low, just right?
Well, I think it's a little too low based on a couple things. One, the Chiefs' schedule. You said in the broadcast earlier, Frank, it's been deemed the easiest at least in the AFC.
Right.
And here's a little bit of history. Each of Andy Reid, the first 3 teams, they have. If you add up the over/under for each of those seasons, it adds up to 23. They won 31 games in that year. They surpassed their over/under total in each of Andy Reid's 3 years with the Chiefs. I think this is a team that'll win at least 10. I think we're looking at another playoff team this season.
Sharon?
Well, I don't like to disagree with Blair the Greek over there and his handicapping prowess that has been proven many, many times. Look, I think it's probably just about right. I think one of the things you got to take a little caution here when you're a fan is that those numbers are never going to be stretched out too far. They like to keep them between 6-10 and 10-6. So 6-10 wins for everybody out there. You lose Alex Smith, and where does that number go? All of a sudden, that number looks really, really high. So injuries are a big part of it that Vegas has to take into account. So I don't think any Chiefs fan should feel slighted because it's 9.5. I think that's the right number when you take into account all of the things you don't know that are going to happen during the course of a 16-game season. That being said, this is the year where they have a chance to break out and buck the trend. The trend has been surprise, regress, surprise a little bit last year with the 11-win seasons. Now, if they can put another 11-win season out there and be a division champion, I think you've got proof that they're a really strong football team, and you can start to get excited about them making a deep playoff run. But I think 9.5 is the right number for them. I'm a Chiefs fan. I'd bet them over. I wouldn't bet it if I were going to Vegas.
I can't wait to hear what TJ has to say about over/under total series.
I will
16 wins.
I will defer to resident gambling degenerate Soren Petro here and say that 9.5 is the right number. Look, I think that I think if I'm going to Vegas, I like this number for the Chiefs because I think that they will win more games than this. But as Soren mentioned, this is a number that they like to keep between 6 and 10, and that's 9.5 is on the high end of that. So they think the Chiefs are good, and I think with good reason. Their offense is as good as it's ever been under Andy Reid. They have more talent, more weapons on that side of the ball. The question is the defense and whether or not they can sustain the level of secondary play that they had a season ago and sustain the level of pressure they got on the quarterback with essentially the same defensive front seven, just a year older, which traditionally doesn't work in the NFL.
All right, and our final hot topic. After allegations of hiding sexual assault charges against his players since 2011, with the help of the Baylor School Police Department, should Baylor head coach Art Briles be fired? You got to remember also, Soren, we talked about this, what happened with the Baylor basketball disaster several years back. So
Yeah, I think it's important to understand the way you worded the question. Should he be fired?
Right.
Not will he be fired. Let's keep in mind, we live in a world where a major college basketball coach had sexual relations with a woman in a booth in a restaurant, then stood watch while there were hookers and prostitutes being brought into his program. I'm talking, obviously, about what went on down at Louisville, Kentucky, and yet there you still have Rick Pitino as the head coach. So what appears like it should happen doesn't always happen. I'll give some credit to Blair and myself for our conversation on Thursday. We talked about this when he was on the program, which he does every Thursday, and we said, look, this thing is going to get a lot bigger. It's going to build some momentum. It's just waiting for some of the big Texas columnists to start writing about it and for people to recognize when you are conspiring with the police department to cover up really violent crimes,
right,
you're in big trouble. And if that's what happened with Art Briles, even if there's any hint of that happening, if his coaching staff did it, then he should be fired. Will he is a different question. He's the most important thing in the history of Baylor football.
right, there was a rape involved here, and one football player beat up a male student as well. So there's a bunch of stuff going on. TJ?
Yeah, I would say that unfortunately, it's not the crime. Oftentimes, it's the cover-up that gets you caught, and with Art Briles, that will be the case. Now, there's no evidence at this point to corroborate that he was in a coordinated effort with the Waco Police Department. There is, however, evidence that the Waco Police Department covered things up, and I think that the people who are responsible for that inside the Waco Police Department should be held accountable for that. That being said, I think this is maybe a telling of a bigger issue, that sometimes in this country, institutions are protected much more than victims are. And instead of protecting the women in this case, or emphasizing that they should be protected in this case, people are focused in that community in Waco on protecting the institution with religious ties, not just the football program, but a football program tied to a religion. And I think sometimes that gets into a very sketchy area, one that we certainly need to consider. And I think that this is an instance in which we need to look at the community at large down in Waco, Texas, and make a determination on whether or not there's a systemic problem there, that victims are immediately turned into pariahs in their own community if they go up against the institution of Baylor.
Blair, your thoughts?
The outrage here has to come from within Baylor University. We know what national media has said, and we know what national women's groups have said about this, but the outrage has to come from Baylor. It has to come from Board of Regents. It has to come from professors. It has to come from students. It has to come from co-eds. It has to come from Baylor University. That can have a profound impact if Art Briles keeps his job, or if athletic officials keep their jobs. Look at what's happened at the University of Missouri. Right. The student protests in November have caused the enrollment for next fall to decline. We're pretty sure that the enrollment at Missouri is going to decline next fall because of some actions that were taken on campus. Whether you agree with the actions at Missouri or not, that has had an impact on the University of Missouri. If you want change at Baylor, if you want the football coach out or athletic officials out, be outraged. Baylor University needs to be outraged by what happened on its campus by its football players. It can't let this stand.
All right. Very well said. Up next, we get some final thoughts from the panel.
Hey, Frank.